showtime.
It's showtime. And here we go.
Welcome into another episode of the Movie Geek Podcast. I'm your host, George T. And I'm not going to waste any time here. So, like, comment, subscribe if you are new to my videos and my channel. This is obviously a special edition because I don't usually do a review of a TV series in the midst of it. I usually wait till the very end, but this could not wait. We are halfway through season 5 of Stranger Things, the very last season, the 4-part season 5, part 1 review. So let's not waste any time because there's so much out there. There's going to be a lot of information in here, my thoughts and my theories as to where this finishes. It could be the popular choice, as there are many speculations out there of how this will end, or this, that, and the other. So let's see if I match up with yours or many of the people that you may have seen already. So let's begin. We are going to begin with, obviously, the very beginning. The Crawl is the first one, where we see young Will, and he is taken that night by Vecna. So Will, played by Noah Shopman, and Vecna, played, or Henry in certain cases, Jamie Campbell Bower, and is infected by the tentacle. And he mentions to Will, Vecna does, that he will be doing great things. So maybe we had all forgotten about that in season 1, where he was captured. We all thought maybe the Mind Flayer. Vecna wasn't as prominent in the first season. We get to see him much later on in the series, but Vecna needed Will for something, so we're getting all this information kind of thrown at us. If we go back to the present, this is 18 months after the Rift broke apart the small town. The U.S. military, led by Dr. K, played by Linda Hamilton, the great Linda Hamilton, and Lieutenant Akers, played by Robert Akers. Just kind of crazy how that worked out. Have placed Hawkins under quarantine and created a base camp within the Upside Down, while still in the hunt for 11, Millie Bobby Brown, who is training in hiding with Harper, David Harbour, and Joyce Winona Ryder. And so we've got this military, our military, being in 2 places, here in the real world and then up in the Upside Down, and looking for, obviously, the Mind Flayer and Vecna, and also 11. Why are they looking for 11? We don't know right away, because wouldn't they want 11 to be helping them, but they are actually hunting her. We don't know why. So then we get Will, Lucas, played by Caleb Coughlin, Mike, played by Finn Winford, laying low during the military operation. Also Dustin Gaten Matasoro. He is continuing to honor Eddie's life, and it is provoking a lot of hatred toward him. Will, Lucas, and Mike are trying to tell Dustin to maybe tone it down, because again, everybody thinks Eddie is a murderer. You're not going to try to convince them. And he, remembers what Eddie said to him about staying true to himself. And so he, was getting bullied at school. He get his shirt ripped at school by members of the basketball team. So, he's carrying that burden of, trying to defend Eddie's honor and still keep the Hellfire Club alive, because that was something that he believed in. That's a lot, to take over. Now, preference this again with a lot of people who are like, well, they should have recast the kids, because now it's hard to believe that they are, older adults now, or out of high school kids playing high school kids. Look, it happens all the time. So that needs to just kind of, be pushed aside. I know that has been one of the things that people have been saying, but it happens all the time. All right, so now we see Steve, played by Joe Carey, Robin, played by Maya Hawke, Jonathan, played by Charlie Heaton, and Nancy, played by Natalie Dyer. They work at the local radio station. Robin is Rockin' Robin on the radio station, playing all the best hits, and they relay coded messages to the group about opportunities to sneak Hopper and 11 into the Upside Down, which they affectionately call the Crawl, to find Vecna's hideout. They are looking for Vecna. Now, curiously enough, why were they looking for Vecna? Because Vecna, if you remember at the end of season 4, when he was almost killed Max, 11 basically burned him alive and sent him up the Creel house window, and they were able to escape that way. So Vecna's still alive, but obviously that time jump doesn't really get explained as to why they think he's still alive. Now, the theory is that they think the military has seized control of him. 11 is trying to, infiltrate in there to find, what is hiding in that military base. Thinking again, it's Vecna. So now, they sent the messages out. Hopper is ready to go, and 11 wants to go, but he's like, no, it's a routine thing. We don't need you, but she convinces him somehow to go with him. So Joyce, played by Winona Ryder, is with them, but she goes back to the radio station to help them out. So right before they were supposed to go, all of them were supposed to meet up. Dustin is visiting Eddie's grave, and he is beaten very badly by the basketball team. He has been, again, defiant about Eddie, trying to, preserve Eddie's memory, and he basically feels like he's going to die trying to defend Eddie, which might be a spoiler for the end of this series. I have a feeling he will possibly give his life. If you looked at the trailer at the beginning, leading into this, I know there's been a lot of fan trailers out there since these shows came out. Don't look into those. Look and wait until you see if there's an updated trailer by Netflix, because there's a lot of fan trailers out there. I know, I saw a bunch when I was doing the research on this. Trust me. Fan-made for their narrative. So, but it just feels like Dustin doesn't really have much left, but he is going to try to defend Eddie. So they, they start on the crawl. The Demogorgon attacks a military caravan, forcing Hopper to take shelter within the Upside Down. Will telepathically witnesses the attack and sees the Demogorgon head towards the Wheeler residence, just as it tears open a gate in the bedroom of Mike and Nancy's younger sister, Holly, played by Nell Fisher. So there was some interesting turn of events for Holly. Holly was played by twin sisters in season 4, but for whatever reason they went with Nell Fisher, and I'll get to the reason why a little later on. So also in the show, and again there's so much in there, I wanted to go over the brief kind of outline of the show. Murray is also back in this. He is basically the smuggler in this one. Whatever they need, he is able to get under the disguise of a food delivery service from the outside world, because obviously they have quarantined the entire town. And he is played by Brett Gilman, and he is hilarious, as he was in last season. So now we have an idea of, Vecna's range, or the Mind Flayer's range, because Will is seeing things through the eyes of the Demogorgon. So he kind of now is starting to understand that, he can feel when they're there, so it's going to help them a little later on. The second episode, The Vanishing of Holly Wheeler. So as we ended, the Demogorgon is now into the home. There's a funny little thing where Mike and Nancy's parents, her dad, played by Ted, played by Joe Crest, is outside, after all this time, he has just kind of given up, he's just himself, and Karen, the mother, played by Cara Blumel, is trying to keep everything together, but remember the dad is kind of just there and whatever. But so he's outside hitting golf balls when he hears some rustling and whatever. So Holly is in her room when all of a sudden the Demogorgon breaks into the room. She's able to escape him momentarily and run into the bathroom where mom, Karen, is pretty wasted, but she's taking a bath and has got her headphones on. So she busts into the room and it's like, Mom, there's something chasing me. Well, they lock the door. The Demogorgon breaks in. Now they hide in the bathtub, and the whole time I was thinking, God, I hope they don't die before this really, before the Demogorgon finds them, or just leaves or whatever. Luckily, the Demogorgon is chased off when the dad finally turns around, and it has this poltergeist moment. If you remember the original movie Poltergeist, when all the stuff at the end happened, where all the lights were flickering on and off in the house. Well, that was happening behind him, and he realized and turned around and took the golf club that he had in his hand to go upstairs to make sure that they were okay. He finds the Demogorgon out, in the hallway. He tries to hit him with the golf club and is subsequently just scratched up and tossed across the room and through into another room. That's how powerful he was. So we figure he might be dead. He could maybe die. That's another thing we'll have to figure out in the second part. But anyway, Karen now takes Holly downstairs, and the Demogorgon finds them downstairs. And Karen has to make a choice as to what she's going to do to protect Holly. And she tells Holly to run. She takes the wine bottle she had finished, breaks it, and has this little epic little battle with the Demogorgon. She was a badass in this, but then is struck down, and Holly is taken, and Nancy finally arrives at the home with Robin to see that her parents could be dead. They rush them to the hospital, and luckily surviving, or at least in stable enough condition, but it's touch and go, especially for the mother. So Nancy tries to get in to see her mother. They say her larynx is kind of scratched up, so she really can't talk. So Nancy goes in, sees her, and she's like, "Don't speak, but can you write what happened and so on?" So or is Holly okay? And so she does all that, and then they go. So Nancy and Mike theorize that Mr. Whatsit, Holly's imaginary friend. So now let's backtrack. Holly kept seeing the same vision of a man with the trench coat and a hat. We don't see who it is, but it is her imaginary friend named Mr. Whatsit, which we all come to find out that is Henry. May have been real and involved in Ollie's disappearance, which we know. Robin's proposed using Will's telepathic link to Vecna's hive mind to track Holly in the Upside Down, which they do. But Will sees something that he really didn't want to see, and that was there were other children there. And he can't put it together just yet. So Karen informs Nancy and Mike that Mr. Whatsit's first name is Henry. So that's where they kind of get all that from. Will discovers that his earlier visions were actually from Vecna's point of view, so he now knows that he can do a lot more with Vecna and maybe be able to figure out where he actually is. So now we see Holly with Henry, and he puts her in the Creel house, and that's kind of where it ends. So right away now we've seen all the players, and we see Will starting to have a better understanding of so-called powers. He goes back to the vision of what he understood the other day. So he backtracked himself and saw the same vision again, where he was looking up at the sky and it was spinning. So he actually saw what Holly was seeing. Now, Holly was on one of these twirly things at school. I forget what it's called. But she was there, and a friend was pushing her around. But a troublesome little boy named Derek, the bully, decides to, take it and spin her around really quickly, and that is what he saw. He was able to pick up that Derek could be Vecna's next target, so he relays that information. Meanwhile, back in the Upside Down, Hopper and Eleven are up against a very big, fleshy wall. They know they can't climb it, they can't get through it, but then are soon ambushed by a bunch of soldiers trying to capture 11. And so now they have to hide, and this is kind of where we go into the next episode. The next episode is called the Turnbow Trap, meaning Derek's last name is Turnbow. So there you go. They're going to use him as bait, or they're going to use him as a key cog in a a plan. So let's get into this. So we see Derek as just this troubling little boy, a bully to his classmates. He's not very nice to his sister or his parents. So at one point I was like, so why does Vecna need him, and is he even worth saving at this point? Because he's just so terrible. But that is something that we'll get into later. Hopper and 11 are free from the soldiers' gaze, and they take Lieutenant Akers hostage, where Hopper and 11 interrogates him, concluding that Dr. K is hiding Vecna at their base. The reason why they feel that way was because 11 was in his head, and she was pressing and trying to find what was very secretive behind a wall. So she got so far into his head that she literally almost killed him. But unfortunately, she didn't. And I say unfortunately because once Akers got a lot, his senses back, he goes back to the base. But that's a little too far. But 11 kept saying that there's kryptonite behind a sealed door that she cannot see. So automatically they assume it could be Vecna. So Will, Nancy, Mike formed the group that Vecna lured Holly by claiming he was her imaginary friend, prompting them to devise a plan to use Derek to trap the Demogorgon, and it planned to track her into it to find out where Holly was taken. Meanwhile, Henry and Holly are having conversations inside of the Creel house, and he is being very protective of her, where he hasn't been very protective of anybody. But Holly seems to have a connection with him, and so he tells her that he wants her to be safe. There are monsters out here. Do as I say, just stay inside. He, before he leaves, puts a present in the mailbox, and it is a boombox and a favorite cassette of hers. Why is that? Why is that important? Well, we'll get to that in the final episode. So we go back to the plan. So the plan is to kidnap Derek, basically. And there's a whole funny exchange with Robin and the group where she's talking about the tunnels underneath the base, calling them Tom, Dick, and Harry. She uses the word Dick a lot, which is funny because she isn't into Dick, but it was a funny thing, and then they continued it toward the end of the episode. But anyway, they needed to figure out how to get Derek alone, and they have to recruit Erica. Prior Ferguson is her name, where they give her some drugs to drug Derek and his family so that they can be unconscious and transport them away. So the team starts to split up to start their crawl and through the tunnels. Meanwhile, Derek and his family have been relocated to the barn out back. So basically, they split them up, and then they just tore this place apart, and the house became a death trap for the Demogorgon. So they lured it in. They were able to get the tracker on it. The Demogorgon then leaves because he cannot find Derek. So they start to trace him. But they wind up, or Dustin and Joe, Dustin realizes that he's not going to the back to the Upside Down. He's still hunting for him. Will realizes that because he can see the Demogorgon's view. Derek had taken off his, somehow woken up and taken off his sack that he had on his head. And Will is now worried that, the Demogorgon is on his way here. So, and that he was. And he chases down into the barn where Joyce is there to protect them. She grabs a shovel, and interestingly enough, the Demogorgon, which is basically, pretty much unstoppable because, again, he did not die through all the traps that they had set. Barbed wire, flame thrower, just, baseball bats and spike thing that came down and right into the chest. It wasn't stoppable. But for some reason, Joyce, with a shovel, basically kind of chased it away for a few. So that was very interesting, that Joyce had all this power, while Will was kind of keeping an eye on what was going on, and he could actually feel the Demogorgon. So we head back to Holly. Holly sees that there's mail in the mailbox after somebody knocks on the door. She can't see anybody. She can only tell that there could be something out there. She goes to the mailbox and she finds a treasure map with a compass, and it says to Henry, I'm stuck. I need you to come and find me. So she's like, well, I don't know if I should. Henry told me to stay here, but why would he leave me a map and want me to? So she goes and finds Henry's Boy Scout outfit. So she grabs the telescope that he has in there, his little, I want to say like emblem or something, and then dresses kind of like Little Red Riding Hood, kind of, but really not in red, but you know the idea. And she goes into the woods. She gets to the end of the woods and feels that she is being hunted, and we cut back to the rest of the group, and we find Will being able to stop the Demogorgon enough to send it back into the Upside Down, where Nancy, Steve, Joe, and Dustin all wind up in this weird sequence where Steve is driving the car, and he's like, I don't know, if I go fast enough, I can get in, I can get in there before it closes, that portal closes. And they're all like, I don't know if you can do it. And he gets through there, they make it through. So that's kind of how it ends. But we go back to Holly. Holly winds up getting stuck on the rocks right before the main area of the mountain that she saw the little X for, but she didn't want to go in there because she didn't know what was there. But again, she felt like she was being hunted. And lo and behold, a person is there to help her, and it is not Henry. It is Max, played by Sadie Singh. And that's where we leave it. Now, the end, and I don't know if it was the CGI or it was maybe the background that made her kind of like, they just kind of threw her in there and she wasn't really there, because Max has been in a coma the whole time. So yeah, that's number 3. And then we get the crazy number 4, The Sorcerer. And this title, along with the others, has meaningful purpose. If you remember correctly, when the first season, when Will and his friends are playing D&D, this is kind of where we open up to in this one. He is known as Will the Sorcerer. And it becomes very emblematic in that regard. So let's go through this because there's so much in here. So we have Harper and 11 ready to infiltrate a military base to supposedly kill Vecna if he is in there. We also have Dustin, Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan, which is now in the Upside Down. They crash into that fleshy wall and are now stuck. They need Harper and 11 to go find them to help them out. But right before that, and afterwards, Dustin figures out that it might be pointless for them to go and find them because this wall seems to have made a giant circle around Hawkins. And coordinating all the pinpoints between where they and where Harper and L11 are, and then also where one of the portals was, he was able to figure out that the middle point of the circle is Hawkins' lab, where all of this started, where the Mind Flayer was, where Vecna might be hiding. Because clearly Vecna is Mind Flayer's minion. Sounds fair? So Dustin, Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan now have to figure out how to get to the lab. So we kind of shift away from that. We now see Holly interacting with Max inside of the cave system. And Max is telling her all about what she's experienced here. And she talks about being in Henry's mind. Not so much the Upside Down, but in Henry's mind. Seeing visions that she didn't understand because she didn't know whose mind she was in. But again, she's in a coma, and there's a reason why. So she is seeing Henry's visions. Now, we see that Henry, back in the 50s, was in high school and was kind of a dorky kid, that sort of thing. But he was given a flyer by Joyce. It was for a play, Oklahoma. And again, this kind of seems like a throwaway, where we're just kind of seeing, that he, is in this space. He's getting pushed around. He's kind of, just there. But it really isn't. It is a play that he is going to go to or wants to go to. And this is where his trauma starts to begin. So in the next few episodes, probably, when we get back to part 2, we will understand why he, didn't show the rest of this to Max. But on the flyer, there are many names on that flyer. Mainly, obviously, Joyce, Nancy's father, and there's a few other ones there. Hopper is also on there. So, again, you're thinking, okay, that's just weird that he kind of knew them or whatever. But it might not be too weird. So, she is still talking about how she's trying to escape. She winds up in the Rainbow Room, where she sees all but all the kids, all the experimental kids dead. And she's running toward music, and she keeps hearing the music. And the music is the only thing that's keeping her from basically dying, as we saw in season 4. So every time the music stops is when she's pulled back into the Upside Down, where Vecna is coming after her. But when the music is playing and she's in this cave area, it becomes Henry again. When she talked about Henry chasing her, she didn't know what his intentions were with her, because obviously he put her in the Creel house. She escaped because she didn't want to get killed, but Henry winds up chasing her into this area, and he stops, and he is terrified. Why is he terrified? We don't know exactly yet. Max has been trying to figure that out, but she knows that Henry or Vecna cannot go into this space. So that is key. So Holly now is basically Max's way out. She needs to help Holly go back to Henry and be able to kind of be a information trafficker so that she knows how to get out of there. So, perfect. Now we go back to military base, and 11 gets in there, starts tearing the place apart. Dr. K comes in and is knocked out by Hopper. After Hopper almost dies from a pet, I want to call it a pet, tentacle from the Upside Down. But luckily, she's able to survive. So now, Hopper wants 11 to go, find the others, find a way out, find Vecna. He has a plan, which 11 finds out that he has had bombs strapped to him and he is going to try to make the ultimate sacrifice and kill Vecna himself. She doesn't like the idea. He walks her out, and he finds the hallway where that sealed door is that she cannot look into. So we just assume that something is going to happen to Harper. But it doesn't. We'll get back to that. So Will's group is making their way through. Derek now is sent to the military base to gather intel for where the rest of the children have been taken, because basically the army has taken all the children away and trying to hide them in a secure location, which we all know is not secure. We also don't know why they took all the children. Could they be protecting themselves or trying to recreate something with those children? Or were they generally trying to protect them from the Demogorgons and Vecna? So they infiltrate the barracks where Derek is given them information. They come up through the tunnel into the bathroom. Derek now has to identify the kids who know who Mr. Whatsit is and try to get them out secretly. So they go one by one to the bathroom, but because of some piping issues, because when they were digging through the floor they hit some pipes, it starts to flood, which then in turn starts to go into the main part of the barracks where there's a couple of students who notice the water and start to get curious and see Will in there, and they're trying to fix the plumbing, and the little girl screams, and now the military people are trying to bust in the door. They are able to, but most of the kids have gotten away with Robin, and the rest are down in the tunnels, which they are quickly stopped in their tracks by the Demogorgons who are down there. So Will experiences another vision of Holly and 3 other children being restrained by tentacles. And then there are empty spaces, of which there are 8 more. And again, he cannot put it together, but he now may be starting to realize that Vecna is after at least 8 more children besides Holly and the others. And once Derek is out in the open, the Demogorgons attack the entire base. And they are just wiping out the military. Until one of the guys with a flamethrower just starts trying to burn a Demogorgon, which in turn starts to burn the insides of Will, because again he's a part of it. He's a part of that hive mind, which draws the ire of Vecna. Vecna now comes out of the Upside Down and just finishes everyone else off. And now he looks around. He looks for Will. Now Joyce sees this and now is starting to run after him to say, "You're not going to harm my child." He basically flicks his fingers. Joyce goes flying. Now easily he could have killed her, just like he killed some of the military guys, and there was some pretty nasty kills by Vecna in this. Again, I don't want to talk through it, whatever, I just want to get to the details. So he raises Will up, and he brings him slowly over. Vecna tells Will that he intends to use the children, whom he calls perfect vessels, to reshape the world. Interesting. So he doesn't want to kill the children. So what does he need the children for? Will then unlocks physical abilities because once Vecna leaves, he sends the Demogorgons after the children that they took, his friends, and his mother, which in a glorious fashion, Will now stops the Demogorgons in all of the locations and basically, like Vecna, breaks them into pieces and they die. Will now has become a perfect vessel for Vecna in a wild and crazy ending in the last 20 minutes. But what happened to Hopper, you ask? 11 finds out what's behind the door because Hopper comes back to her and shows her what's behind the door. The military has had the number 8, her best friend, locked up in this facility, hiding her away from Vecna, hiding her away for what purpose, which we don't know. We still don't really know what the military's endgame is here, or do we? So, that is basically the 4 episodes. Now, as of notes, and again, there's a lot of theories out there, but here is how I see this. So, we know that Henry, or Vecna in this case, is the main villain. But I don't think he's actually the main villain anymore. And my thoughts are, he is building his own army using these kids. Again, he told Will he wants to reshape the world. But I also think that he wants Will to be the new Vecna, or his soldier to lead the others to kill off the Mind Flayer and release Henry back to his former self. And I think that's why he's keeping Max around, because he knows that Max can help him, because again, with the music and everything else, if you remember Henry's night where he kills his parents, the donging of the grandfather clock was Vecna trying to, or the Mind Flayer, trying to turn him against his parents. The music that they were playing was able to keep his mind free. But when that music stopped was when he got taken over. And so he was taken over by the Mind Flayer and became the Mind Flayer's number 1 soldier. He was able to manipulate. So again, does he needs the 12 kids to form this monstrous army of his to either take over the world and kill the Mind Flayer, or just kill the Mind Flayer so that he can free himself. And that seems logical if you look at it. I mean, he's been under this control for decades at this point, because again, the flashback was to 1959, and it is now 1987, so he has been under that Mind Flayer for a very long time. I think he wants out. I think he is done. And I think 11 was able to convince him of that before she winds up trying to burn and kill him in season 4. So here are my thoughts on where the rest of this goes. So obviously now we have it shaping up to be maybe Henry's redemption story. Um, again, with the flashback that Max had, and again, a lot of those details in that flashback might have gotten overlooked, but I was able to see all of it. So, in a way that the Demogorgons, ran through people all through it, and just ripped people apart and so on, but didn't do it to Joyce. Makes me question, does Henry have, or did Henry have some kind of a friendship or a relationship um, with Joyce? Because Will is the first person the Mind Hive took, Mind Flayer took at the behest of Vecna. Was it because Vecna knew Joyce? I know there's fan theories out there that I don't want to speculate on about Joyce and Henry being together. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, so I'm not gonna filter that one in. But because they went to the same school, could could Henry and Joyce have had some kind of a friendship? That's why he doesn't have the Demogorgons kill up Joyce. Or when he had the chance to kill her right there when she went to attack him and he just flicked her away. Like, get out of the way. Please, I don't want to hurt you. So there is that. Is Vecna Henry, becoming, the good guy, which it seems that way. Obviously, he had to kill off the army guys. He didn't kill Will's friends, although the Demogorgons did go after him, and Will had to unlock his power. Now, was that from Vecna, or was that from the Mind Flayer? That if he, sent the Demogorgons? Because if Vecna did, it was a way to unlock Will's ultimate power, which he's going to need to reshape the army that he is forming to either take over the world himself or, with their full potential, take the Mind Flayer out and set Henry free. And then put Will as Vecna as the ruler of the Upside Down, or ultimately maybe the entire world, as who knows at that point. I do also find it interesting that there were other names on there, like Hopper was on there, and Karen Wheeler was on there. Now, as far as Henry's treatment of Holly, and I know I mentioned that earlier, but Holly's looking very much like his sister, who possibly had survived. I could, in theory, think that the reason why he went after Holly and the Wheelers was because maybe, just maybe, Karen Wheeler is actually Henry's sister, who survived the traumatic beating she took at the hands of Henry and the loss of her parents, where she may have taken on the form of Karen. It is possible. Who knows? Because it just seems very interesting that the people's name that was on this flyer for a play called Oklahoma, which also is the reason why Henry is scared to go inside that cave. the background for the musical Oklahoma has that very background. So whatever happened to Henry, or the more traumatic experience than him just killing his parents and then becoming obviously the tool to open the Upside Down for the Mind Flayer at Hawkins' lab. So whatever happened in there will be revealed at some point, and then we will know what happened to him, what really happened to Henry, besides the fact that the Mind Flayer had taken over the grandfather clock, his time at Hawkins' lab, where his blood was used to, infect the other children to try and unlock powers just like him. And obviously 11 and 8 are also in play. We don't know what their tag team is going to look like and what they're actually bringing to the table. Because now they could kill off Vecna, which in turn may kill Will and the other children, because they've been part of that mind flayer. So there is just a lot of missing pieces here, which are all going to be filled in those final 4 episodes. Amazing that we have come down to this point. Again, I'm going to touch upon this one more time. If I see people complaining that the kids are too old to be playing high school kids, I'm sorry. It happens all the time. There are so many instances of actors playing younger roles. Sorry. I know that is a nitpicky thing that fans like to nitpick about. I just don't understand it. Look, they're not going to recast them for season 5. Okay, we understand the kids are a lot older now. They grew up in front of our eyes from season 1 all the way to now. So when you see those flashbacks of them playing D&D in the basement, you're like, oh my god, they were so young back then. Yeah, they were. I remember going to Rhode Island Comic Con the year the kids were there. I hadn't really seen the series when they were there. It was just being on, so I didn't get to meet them. George got to meet Gayton when he came back to Rhode Island Comic Con right before season 4. I also got to meet Bob, and everybody was talking to him about what happened to him in Stranger Things in that season. But Sean asked, and I really wanted to talk about Rudy. So, but again, there's just so much in there, and I cannot wait for the last 4 episodes. I also, unfortunately, think whatever is going to happen, a lot of these people are going to die. I think Dustin is going to sacrifice himself just like Eddie did. I just have that feeling with his arc and his distancing of himself from his friends, that I think he's going to do that heroic, step in. I also feel like if something happens to Henry, it'll also happen to Will, and somebody else is going to have to sacrifice themselves to save Will, or that sort of thing. Or other people are going to die around Will, and it's going to drive him insane enough to become Vecna. There's just so many things that could happen. Will Henry get his redemption story? How is Max going to get out? Holly is going to be the key to getting her out. She might be able to pull Henry out of Vecna. Again, there's just so many things. When is Max? We do see that in one of the trailers that Max does awaken from her coma at some point. So that will sever the tie. She'll be able to get out from under Vecna's gaze, which again I think is going to be because of Holly. But what is she going to bring to the table? I mean, there's just so many questions that are going to need to be answered. The first 3 episodes, before that finale, are going to be the keys. Obviously, I mean, there's just not. I mean, I'm just stating obvious facts here, and just babbling at this point. So, what do you guys think? Am I on the right track, or am I way off? Do you have your own theories and speculation as to how this ends? I think overall, whoever does come out of this alive will live to tell a wonderful secret. Yeah, I'm just loving what they're doing with season 5. So, with that being said, I've got some more stuff to do before the Christmas break. I will have probably a preview of the nominations for these award shows that are going to start up right away in January. Also have, obviously I'll have part 2 of Stranger Things as well. And then, man, January is going to hit hard because, my year review, our look back at 2025, our look forward to 2026, and the top 25 movies there, and other movies in different categories, like I did with the 2025 episode. We'll also have, my top movies for January. I mean, there's just so much stuff. So I hope that you continue to watch and like, subscribe, comment. As I've said many times, tell your friends, tell anybody that you know that loves movies and TV as much as I do, that this is just a guy who loves to talk about this stuff and would love for people to subscribe. I mean, they don't even have to watch my face on TV. They can just put it on in the background. So, with that being said, I'll see you all at the movies.
You like that, baby? Let him know where I came from, yeah!
See you next time. Bye.
Waiting for you. Goodbye. Goodbye. Bye. Goodbye.
Hasta la vista, baby.
That's all, folks.